think that it's reasonable for prosecutors and for sheriffs and law enforcement to ask the question, is this worth trampling on half the Bill of Rights? I think we've seen just in the last year several states that have passed red flag laws who are still having these incidents happen. There are serious due process concerns with these laws. We're trampling over several constitutionally protected rights. It's exactly what we're concerned about, is a red flag law being abused. It's a boyfriend using a red flag law to disarm an ex-girlfriend. And now we're working through the court system to make sure that she has her rights back.
Governor Gretchen Whitmer signing sweeping new laws she says will get guns out of the hands of people who can do harm.
Extreme risk protection orders, we have a mechanism to step in and save lives.
But for as much support as there's been, there's also pushback. One Metro Detroit sheriff says he won't enforce them, and that county declaring itself a constitutional county, saying it won't support laws they think violate the Second Amendment. So how much wiggle room do prosecutors and sheriffs really have? And what will this law actually do? The debate starts right now. Congresswoman, you mentioned Oxford, Congresswoman. Excuse me for interrupting, but I want to get to some really important points here. Oxford, and you look at Ethan Crumbley, you look at his parents. Who would have helped if this law was in place in Michigan during that time to stop Ethan Crumbley from doing what he did?
4 precious lives at Oxford High School, students who I marched with when they were in middle school, who were in that high school when this happened, traumatized individuals, educators. And so, yes, there's extreme risk protection orders, but there's now also safe storage, Rube. This is a major triumph, and we can lower these indicators. We can lower these instances. I got a stack of letters sitting on my desk.
But would this have taken the gun away? Would this have taken the gun away from Ethan Crumbley? If this law was in place in the state of Michigan, would Ethan Crumbley's gun not have been in his hands that morning? That's the question that we're asking.
Well, I certainly can't speak to those specific circumstances, but what I do know is laws that require people to lock up their guns and require parents to lock up their guns may have made a difference. We cannot go back in time, Rube. You and I know this.
Congresswoman Stevens,
my goodness gracious.
We're going to be talking to you more about this. We're going to talk to you more about this in just a moment here. Let's get right to Mr. Boudreau, Brenden Boudreau. This is an important topic. Livingston County's prosecutor says, you know what, I'm not going to enforce this. Is that the best way to just say I'm not going to enforce it if indeed it could save lives? You hear the Congresswoman saying this could save lives. Why would we do anything less than what they're saying to help save lives?
Well, I think what we've seen with the red flag laws that have actually passed across this country is that it's a mix of results at best. And I think that it's reasonable for prosecutors and for sheriffs and law enforcement to ask the question, is this worth trampling on half the Bill of Rights? There are serious due process concerns with these laws. There's actually 2 rulings that have come out of New York State now from their Supreme Court who have ruled against red flag laws because of the due process violations that these laws have. And New York's law is very similar to what Michigan just passed. And it's interesting that one of the cases that's actually working through the courts there is a case exactly what we're concerned about, is a red flag law being abused. It's a boyfriend using a red flag law to disarm an ex-girlfriend. And now we're working through the court system to make sure that she has her rights back.
Chad King, your thoughts about what the governor signed. Is this going to help?
I don't know that it will. I do understand some of the rationales to why it may have been signed. I think if the end result is to save lives, then I can understand that being the impetus for signing it. However, I do believe that it's wrong. It's the wrong thing to do. It's wrong-headed because it abdicates responsibility. It abdicates the political responsibility to address the root causes that are much further upstream than the piece of metal or plastic or taking away someone's rights. And so that, for me, is the major problem that I have with it. Additionally, I think that there are issues with the enforcement of it. I don't know, and I cannot trust, and I know there are several people that won't trust how it will be enforced. Will it be equitably enforced? Right now, in the states that do have red flag laws, we have 90% of red flag warrants that are issued are instituted or are requested by law enforcement. I think this will disproportionately impact poor people and disproportionately impact those who are of marginalized or minority communities.
Congresswoman, I want to get back to that point about what's going on in Southwest Florida right now. 80% of the people who were involved with this red flag law in Florida didn't have lawyers, but judges took away guns 90% of the time. Don't you think that's an injustice to people who just don't have money?
Well, I think there are a lot of injustices going on in Florida, and certainly there's a failure of leadership taking place there right now. And as a national lawmaker, I'd like to remind everybody that we passed in a bipartisan way last year, just under a year ago, a bipartisan common sense gun safety package that does what? Alongside State Senator $1 billion allocated across the states Oakland County's to properly implement these red flag laws, extreme risk protection order laws. And I know under State Representative Kelly this legislation on the Judiciary Committee, many have been analyzed. And, Mr. Boudreau is talking about rights. We have rights to make sure that people can live peacefully. A Buffalo shooting, people of color being attacked, students in Uvalde, children. I have letters on my desk from teachers, from students saying, please do something. The urgency for families is palpable. It is unacceptable. 6 countries issued warnings about coming to the United States because of our gun violence problem. We got to do something.
And so, Chad, one of the things people are saying you got to do is make sure this law is enforced the right way. And they're saying the governor did the right thing. Look, you look at Florida as a state on both sides. The conservatives can tout as being, very conservative, doing the right thing. And then some people are saying, look, their red flag law is working, including in one case in October, a 17-year-old student threatened to kill a bunch of students at Siegel Alternative High School. And he threatened to do it, and the red flag law stopped him from doing it. If one school shooting is prevented, isn't a law like this worth it?
No, and I'll say it this way. I think that all of us will agree that we are steadfastly against the criminal misuse of firearms, right? I think that all of us will agree as well that we want to make sure that all of our rights are held safe, and everyone can exercise those rights in the way that they deem fit to, as long as it doesn't infringe on the rights of other people. Where the red flag law, what that does, it abdicates and tramples on the Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, and the 14th Amendment. And so if you're talking about one law that is going to disenfranchise people, I have a problem with that.
Brenden, we only have a few seconds left. You willing to see if this works, and are you hopeful that this will prevent someone from getting hurt?
No, and unfortunately, I don't think it's going to. I think we've seen just in the last year several states that have passed red flag laws who are still having these incidents happen. And again, I agree with Chad. We're trampling over several constitutionally protected rights. And the issue about due process, the judges in New York said that there's more due process in the mental health system than there is. There's more due process rights for a 48-hour hold, whereas you're losing gun rights for weeks possibly under red flag laws.
An important discussion that we're going to continue. I want to thank Brenden Boudreau, Ali Savit, Chad King, and of course Congresswoman Haley Stevens for joining us from Washington. Thank you for being a part of this very critical discussion. The conversation is not over. After the break, we're joined by a prosecutor from the other side of the political aisle, as well as an activist in the faith-based community, to talk about the impact these new laws should have